AFTV, Sheroy, second win of the season from 2 games played, 6 points on the board. Can't complain much, can we?
Can't complain much, man. And you look at the teams that are above us in terms of City, who we kind of knew were going to be there, but you look at the way that Brighton have started the season, there's no one else with 2 wins out of 2. And just in terms of the optics, I really wanted to make sure that we were still with that pack going into game week 3, right? So that is a relief. But now I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking, Crystal Palace on a Monday night, we haven't won a Monday night fixture under Arteta, apparently. Palace have only lost, I think, 2 of their last 10 at home, and that's including this game. The last one was against City. It's a difficult place to keep a clean sheet. We go down to 10 men and we come out with it. So you have to take the positives from that. But given the trajectory of this team, I'm still somewhat underwhelmed. You know, even despite all of those positives. And I think a lot of that stems from the system, and still that lack of real. We're just not killers in front of goal. And I wanted a statement win today because I didn't think the first one was a statement win. I thought Monday night, the whole world's watching. Everyone else has played. All eyes are on Arsenal. You can really send a message. And tonight we perhaps didn't do that going forward, but I think we did send a defensive message for sure.
And I guess that's important because when you look at last season and listen, much debate about how the season ended, whether it's bottled, choked, all of that stuff, forget that for a sec. But when you take a step back, look at the amount of goals we scored, on par, if not better, than some of the greatest teams we've had. It's the goals conceded that really cost us at the end. And it's the goals conceded at home, which was why I was so frustrated with the Forest one. But we followed it up in the best possible way in that sense, keeping a clean sheet away from home Monday night against Crystal Palace. And if you told me before the game you'd come out of there with 10 men for about 15 minutes, you get a 1-0 win and you hold on towards the end. And I think holding on is a bit harsh because as much as they were creating wave after wave of not even opportunities or chances, wave after wave of attacks, they weren't getting anywhere with them. So I think you're right. I think looking back at it, there's a hell of a lot of positives to take defensively. But you mentioned the system and you mentioned defensively. Let's talk about offensively and what it is that we might need in the next week and a half, because now with Timber's injury, everyone's focusing on the defensive side of things. Do you still think someone needs to come in an attacking sense?
I think someone definitely does need to come in an attacking sense, because the reality is this is a recurring injury for Gabriel Jesus now. And it seems like he's reluctant to play Trossard in the 9 for whatever reason. And Eddie Nketiah, for all the praise that people will perhaps heap on him for today's performance, he's not someone that I'm confident to lead the line for 8 months of a year. You know, I don't think he's going to get us to the promised land in that sense. And the system for me, look, one of the problems with last year was we were hemorrhaging goals, as you said. And the system, if I'm looking at the last 2 games, I mean, yeah, Forest scored on the break, but they didn't create very much at all. And if you look at Palace's XG today, despite the fact that we played a third of that game with 10 men, their XG was under 1. And I can't remember any clear-cut opportunities or attempts on target. I mean, I know they had a header that was glanced wide they could have done better with, but you're talking about defending 30 minutes against Premier League opposition in their own backyard, and they're not really fashioning any chances. So the system is serving a purpose. It's just about what Arteta wants to prioritise. Maybe he thinks that we actually do need to tighten up and we need to become the 1-0, 2-1 merchants as opposed to the 3s and 4s. And that's not necessarily what you want to hear as a fan. But with the system, look, what it looked like today was a lot of players not necessarily knowing exactly what they need to do with the element of fluidity that they had towards the end of last season. So if you're looking at the way that we played last season as the first language of this squad, I think you're now looking at this squad learning a second language. And if you're speaking your second language at the outset, it's never going to be as fluent as your first. But you do get there, you know. It's just a question of whether we have the time.
On that, you know, I wanted to send a message against Forest. You mentioned sending a message today against Palace. Is it now the Fulham game we look at where, you know, we not necessarily must send a message, but it's the one where we want to see things clicking a bit more offensively now, home to Fulham, who haven't had the greatest starts to the season and lost one of their big players this summer, or about to lose.
Yeah, definitely. And I wouldn't be surprised if we are a bit more fluid going forward, because I think the Tomiyasu red combined with the Timber injury is actually going to force Zinchenko to start in this team. And even when we had 10 on the pitch, when Zinchenko came on, that wave after wave stopped.
Yeah.
We started retaining possession again in the final third, and we started breathing again, because that's what the guy does. And look, I wanted him to start today, but it's obvious that he wasn't fit. I think Tomiyasu, bless him, he had a poor game. You know, he made Jordan Ayew looked like prime Morris, you know, and it wasn't a comfortable night for him. I do want to touch on the officiating, just to the extent that I don't see how a league with this much money and this many eyes on it can keep getting those wrong. And I'm not just talking about the red, which I didn't think was a red, but also apparently they ought to have had a penalty. This has been happening for far too long now, and they need to get it right, because I'm looking at other sports. I'm looking at cricket. They've successfully implemented tech. Rugby have done the same. Tennis have done the same. There's absolutely no reason as to why Premier League football can't. But look, in terms of the Fulham game, look, if you ask me after the Fulham game, if we come out of there with another cheeky 1-0 and it's tentative, am I going to complain too much about not sending a message?
Of course not.
No, because the points are what matter, particularly at this stage of the season. But if this is the system that we are going to persist with, this system needs to click, because we are the Arsenal. We have a cannon. That cannon needs to start firing.
Yeah, love that, Sheroy. Come on.